I'll take the silence as a no. And that's all right. So what I'm gonna start with is, so again, this is for, I use Visual Studio Code like pretty much every day, and for web development at my job. I'm a software engineer at Fidelity Investments in Salt Lake City, and I just wanted to just kind of show some cool little things, little nuggets of useful things about Visual Studio Code. I'm by no means a Visual Studio Code expert. I just use it a lot, and there's some things that I've just found to be helpful on a day-to-day basis for me. But there's a lot of things that I still don't know, because it's a pretty incredible piece of software, I gotta say. And Visual Studio is a whole other beast that I hardly know anything about. I used it at my other job, but I used it for very, very specific things. I was not using it to its full extent. I'm a Visual Studio Code person, and I really like it. I've never found a reason to try anything else. People ask me what editor I think is best. I honestly don't know. The only one that I have any real familiarity with is Visual Studio Code, because I just haven't needed to use anything else. I hear Atom's great. I think I did use Atom at one point just to try it out. But I ran into trouble doing something that I thought should be very simple, and I tried to do it in VS Code and it worked instantly. So I just never went back. And there's other editors too, but I don't really have much to say about them other than I use Visual Studio Code every day and I haven't found a reason to use anything else. But that's not to say that it's the best. It's just what I use every day. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And here we are. I'm going to hide these controls at the top. All right, so Visual Studio Code, super awesome. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about the extensions. So, and also if anyone has any questions or anything, feel free to stop me. I'm happy to answer any questions. But anyways, so I think some of the most important features of VS Code that I want to go over in terms of web development there's really three things here that are really fantastic. One is the version control, the source control. And I had always been kind of intimidated by this for some reason until I started using it. And now I rarely use the git command line unless I need to do something like a little more complex than what this allows you to do. But what's nice about the built-in source control is that if you have git, then committing, staging, and pushing and pulling and merging are all ridiculously easy. And you don't really have to mess around with the command line too much. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And the other, I think, most important, or at least most useful feature of VS Code is their built-in debugger. And this I was super intimidated to learn about when I first kind of started coding. But now I use this every day. Like I seriously use this debugger constantly. It's fantastic. It saves me a lot of time. So we're going to just kind of go over some very basics. You could probably do an entire episode just on the debugger, but we'll just kind of gloss over some important stuff with it. Thirdly, the extensions is fantastic. There's a whole crap ton of extensions out there. These are the ones that are listed here, obviously in the installed, are the ones that I have installed. I'm just going to point out some ones that I think that every web developer should probably have. Eslint is pretty critical. And we're going to go over some ways to use this guy. Jest is pretty fantastic, although there's lots of testing libraries out there for different purposes. Jest is pretty fantastic though. And then live server is really awesome for when you're debugging or at least trying to run static sites in your coding. Oh, did I hear someone?
Yes, I was asking, what is Jest for?
It is it's a testing library. It's a test runner.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's great for, well, running tests. And we're going to do a little example with it today. And again, I could do a whole thing on testing, which I am actually going to do. I think in a few weeks, I've got one scheduled for doing Jest. But I'm just going to show you how VS Code, how you can use this extension in VS Code. It's pretty great. If you use Docker, the remote containers, it's called remote WSL, or sorry, remote development. All these other ones come with it. All these ones in blue. This one's pretty awesome. But I'm not going to go. I don't think I'm going to have time to go into this because this is a whole other universe. But I just wanted to let you know it's available. So if you are working with Docker or any sort of other containerized system, the remote development extension is pretty cool. I've used it with Docker and it's awesome. Some other ones. Oh, this one's cool. Visual Studio IntelliCode. This is useful for just, it kind of can finish your sentences for you, so to speak. Eslint is kind of deprecated. Eslint is basically taking over for that. And that's pretty much it. Oh, and then this debugger for Chrome. Those are the ones I really think are really awesome. And if any of you guys do Angular or React, there are certain snippets that are really great so that you can save a lot of time. So this one right here by This Country, these snippets here, it allows you to like type, there's like a little example here where it will basically, you can just type in a snippet and it'll produce, you know, a template for like a function or a class or something, which is really fantastic. And there's the same one for Angular too. And there's so many out there. Sometimes it can be hard to pick one that's good. This Country seems to be really good. Although you can look at, if you look at the star rating and then the number of downloads, that can give you a good idea of how legit it is. If you see something with 2 stars and there's like 1,000 users, it's probably not a good library or a good extension, I mean. Yeah, so that's really quick overview. So the first thing I want to talk about is the source control. Because again, source control and the debugger are the 2 most important features of VS Code that I use every day. So I wanted to focus on them first. So now it uses Git by default. And for it to work, you have to have Git installed for one of your projects. Now this isn't an exercise in Git today, so I'm just going to assume that you have Git on your computer, but we will be doing a webinar focused specifically on Git for those of you who are interested. But for this, we're just going to assume that you have Git, and we're going to create a project, a little fake project that uses Git. So the first thing to do is we're going to use the Git command line to initiate a new project. So I'm just here in my VS Code demo project. We're going to initiate a repository. Okay, as you can see, nothing much really happened. But once we create some files and stuff, we'll have a lot more interesting things to do. All right, so let's go ahead and create a file. Wait, why is my, oh, that's weird. Anyway, so let's create a file here. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and create just a index HTML file. My thing is being weird. There we go. Okay. All right, we're just gonna do some silly little episode 4, and we'll just do a little h1 tag. All right, so here we have some lame HTML file. Okay, a couple things to notice. Without the Git project being initiated, you wouldn't see this file name being green, and you would also not see this U here. This is all the source control kind of doing some work for us. So let's kind of look at what this does. I'm going to make a little JS file, and we'll make a little CSS file. Okay, notice how every single one of these is green with a U in front of it. What that means is that it's untracked by Git. And so what that means, if you're not familiar with Git, it just means that it hasn't really registered in the source control yet. It's a file that doesn't exist yet. And what's cool, what VS Code will do for you is tell you this information with this color code situation. So U means untracked. And if you notice over in the icon, there's now this number showing up. This tells you, if we click on it, we can now see this little menu here that shows us kind of where we're at with the changes to our project. This is really fantastic because it shows us, hey, there are changes that have been made to these files. And if you click on one, so let's click on the HTML file I just made, it brings up this split screen. And on the left, you'll see what it looked like at the beginning of the project. And if we've been making multiple commits, you would see what it looked like at the previous commit. And on the right, you see what our new changes are. As you can see, this is a brand new file, so everything that we've added is new. Pretty cool. This is really great for just getting us a quick snapshot of what has changed in your project. So this one's not as interesting. I made a new file. I haven't added anything to it. Same with this one, but we will in a second. Cool. All right. Another thing that's really awesome is we can discard, or sorry, we can immediately, oh, we got someone joining. Awesome. So we can immediately go to this file. So I've got a few options here. If I hover over here, I've got the ability to stage changes. I've got the ability to discard changes, which is cool. I'll show you in a second. And then I can also just straight up open the file from here, which is pretty awesome. And then if I hover over this changes, I can discard all the changes that have been made, and I can also stage all of them. So instead of having to go into the command line and doing like git add or git remove or whatever, I can just click on these icons here. It's just nice. And it's just something that VS Code provides. So let's go to, we'll click on the index.html and it just takes us to the file. Okay, awesome. So, all right, we've made our file. I'm gonna do a little, we'll just do a hello world. Hello world. Here's my sweet JavaScript application, and then here's our. We'll just go into our CSS, and we'll just say we'll take the normal margin off of everything. Okay. Sweet. All right. What I'm going to do now is I've made some changes, and if I hit this plus sign, I can either do it for everything or one file at a time. I'm going to just do it for the index.html. Let's see what happens. Okay. Our source control system built into VS Code can give me can show me kind of my progress. So notice this no longer says U, this says A. It means that it's been added. It means that it's now been staged. And while the other ones have still been untracked. So if I do it for all of them, so I'm just going to go ahead and add everything else. Now everything's been added. What that means, I'm now ready to commit. So I'm just going to do initial commit. And what's cool is that this is the identical to just writing git commit -m and then like, writing my commit message. But instead of doing the terminal, I can just do it here. I type it here and I hit the check mark and boom, everything's been committed. There's no more changes showing up. My source control has gone back to its original state. There's no more changes because it's been committed now. And I did that all through the VS Code source control, which is awesome. And so now if I were to go into one of my files, I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna make something here. Welcome to Code Talk. Okay, I'm gonna save my file. And as you can see, my source control now tells me that this file has not been added, but it's now modified. M means modified. And if I go into here, you'll see the changes. And if I click on it, now we get a difference between the previous commit over here and the state and the changes that I've made over here. Pretty awesome. I use this literally every day. No joke. Every single day. And of course, I could then go through the process of committing and stuff. But what's really awesome is, a lot of times if I'm in a branch that I've made a bunch of changes to, or I'm experimenting with something, but I come to find out that whatever strategy I'm using just isn't going to work. And how many of you have been working on a project, you build a feature some way that you think will work and then ends up just being awful and you just want to start over with where you left off? Does that happen a lot to you guys? Because it happens a lot to me. And it kind of sucks to have to try to go back and remember oh, well, did I do this line? Did I do this? Did I do that? What did I do to I don't remember exactly what I did, but I've got several files that have changed. And I think that if I just delete this line and this line, I think I'm back to where I was. That's not an effective way of doing this. What you can do is you can discard all the changes that you've made since your last commit. So I added this line, but let's say I don't want that. I can just go here and discard changes through that file specifically, or if I had multiple files that I wanted to discard, I could just discard all of them, which is pretty cool. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. It's going to send me a warning, discard, check it out. I'm back to where I was. Pretty awesome. And finally, suppose I delete a file. Let's say I don't really want this one anymore. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this file. You'll notice in my source control, boom, D stands for deleted. That means it's a change that I've made where it happened to be that I deleted a file. Pretty great. And now I can, if I wanted to, if I was oh crap, I didn't actually mean to do that, you can discard the changes, which will then restore your file. And boom, there it is again. Super awesome. And then finally, I just want to talk about branching really quick. You can do all of your branching commands, most of them anyways, within Visual Studio Code itself. So for example, by default, your master branch is the first branch that gets created when you start a project. But what's really awesome is that from the source control menu, so you just go into source control and then there's these triple ellipses here. You can click on that and check this out. For those of you who use Git, you should be familiar to you. You can pull code from places, you can push code, you can even clone things. You can check out to other branches, you can create branches. So for example, I'm going to create a branch called feature/demo. Boom, check it out. I'm now in the feature demo branch. And if I want to, I can now check out to other branches. So I can go back to master, I can create new branches. I could go to specific commits. All that stuff I can do right in VS Code, which is dope.
What is creating a branch from?
What was that?
Create new branch from the second option. What is the second option for of the menu?
This means if I wanted to create, yes. So this means that if you wanted to check out, if you wanted to create a new branch that's not from the branch that you're currently on, then you can select that. Does that make sense?
Oh, so I
So
don't.
like
I
it
don't
just
have-
tells you what branch you want to create. You want to branch off from.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So if I had another branch called like feature slash, I don't know, example, and currently I'm on demo, then I could create a branch from that one as opposed to the one I'm currently on. It's just a shortcut.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Cool. Does anybody else have any questions so far?
What is the, maybe it's not important, but what is in the bottom, the icon next to the check mark, on the left? What is that for?
Right here,
Yes.
the toggle view mode.
Mm-hmm.
This is just how you want to structure what you see here. I don't know if that's, I haven't actually really used that. Let me make like a change to something. We'll go to like, I'm not really sure what it does. It's not really doing anything right now, but it looks like it has something to do with how it displays something, but it doesn't appear that it's doing anything that I can see at the moment.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks.
Yeah, so I'm not really sure, honestly. We'll have to play around. Let's see. Cool. So all the basic things that you could possibly do with using the Git CLI, the command line, you can do in VS Code. And I highly recommend doing it in VS Code only because it's easier and also it's quicker, I think. And I just really enjoy being able to like visually see what I'm doing as I'm doing it. So you can kind of, this is kind of a nice substitute for Git status. You can see your modifications. You can see what's been deleted. You can see what's been added. Everything's color coded. It's really easy to see where you're at with certain things. Cool. So that's that. So the next thing I want to talk about is the debugger. This thing is awesome. I was always intimidated by it, but I've come to love it. I don't know everything about it, but it's pretty awesome. So what I'm going to do really quick is we're going to create a little fake node project. And this, you can use this on any node project. So for those of you who maybe are in a boot camp or have started to learn Express or Node, this can be really useful because in the browser, there, like what we talked about last week, there's the dev tools, which allow you to put breakpoints inside of, inside of your code here. But when you're not working inside of a browser, you don't really have any options. You can't run your node code in a browser, although Google does kind of let you do that, but that's not what this is about. But there's not really an obvious way to debug your node application because everything is just, there's no browser, right? Node is just a V8 engine running outside of the browser. So you don't really have that easily accessible. So VS Code provides a way to debug node projects. So this is awesome. This is like my favorite feature of VS Code. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a function that's a little more interesting. So let's make a function called hello world. It's going to be a function that takes your world and returns hello, and then whatever your world is. Let's just say world. Okay, cool. And we'll go ahead and export it. Sweet. All right. Super arbitrary, but whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and, oh, and then let's also make another index.js file. And we're going to get that function. And if you're not too familiar with Node or JavaScript, don't worry. What I'm doing is not that important yet. This is just some arbitrary thing. So I'm going to say hello world, and we'll do world, and we'll do Earth, and we'll do, I don't know, Mars. So we'll get okay, silly, but it gets the point across. I've got this application that's using this function. Okay, beautiful. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the debugger, and the first thing to do is you can run it here. I prefer to just create a launch JSON file here because you have a lot more control over how your debugger is running. So we're going to go ahead and create a launch file. So there's always a few options here. Depending on the extensions you have, you may or may not see some of these. Node.js, though, is built right in. So that will always be there. So we're going to go ahead and click on Node.js. Okay, and what it does, oh, what just happened? It isn't creating it. There we go. Okay, it was just slow. Okay. Okay, so what just happened? It created a VS Code folder, and it has this file called launch.json. All this is a configuration for the various debugger environments that I want to create. And in most cases, you may or may not have to add or edit some properties here. If you're not sure what some of these do, the documentation is really fantastic. But let's just kind of break this down. All right, so for this is a Node configuration. Obviously, we're writing JavaScript using the V8 engine. So this is Node, we're using Node. This launch, what this means is that we're using this configuration to actually launch a program as opposed to attaching to one that's already running. We're actually gonna like run our program using this configuration. This name is whatever we want it to be. I'll just call this demo. And this name will pop up when you go into the debugger, and you can select from configurations. So now that says demo. Awesome. Because obviously you can have multiple configurations. All right. So you don't really need to worry about this guy. These are just files that will skip. And then here is the program that we want to run. So we care about this file. And as you can see, by default, it selects the workspace folder that we're in and index.js. But if this was called something else, I could just replace it. I named it index.js because I knew that that was the default. So just so you know, it's also common to see like server.js or whatever, especially if you're running an Express app, for example. But we'll just stay with the defaults for now. Okay, what does this do? So in order to get this working, the first thing we're going to do is let's just run it. Let's just see if this runs. So there's a couple ways to do it. The shorthand is to do F5. It'll just automatic. That's just VS Code's default hotkey. So if I hit F5, actually, I'm going to click this green button just so you guys can see it easier. So once you've selected the configuration you want to use, and you hit play, check it out. It's going to run the program. And I didn't put any breakpoints or anything, so it kind of just already ran. So let's actually use this for something useful. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a breakpoint here. So as you can see, where if I hover a little bit to the left of the line numbers, I'm able to put in breakpoints wherever I want. And same for over here. So I'm going to go ahead and put a breakpoint here. And actually, no, we'll just worry about this first one right here.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I see it's working, obviously, but will just put export instead of in front of the line 1 instead of line 3, 4, and 5 in the app.js?
Oh, you mean like this?
Yes, delete 3 and 4 and 5.
I can't because that is not valid ES6 syntax for Node. Node doesn't support that yet. I'd have to use some sort of bundler or compiler like TypeScript or something, or Babel.
Because in index.js is telling me to use ES6 and not like if you hover in the require, you get 3 dots. Oh, it doesn't tell you?
Yeah, it's not going to tell me on mine because I'm just using, this is just the version of JavaScript that mine's set up to use is not a later version. Okay. But like you're right, like there are ways to do that. I just don't have mine configured for that at the moment.
And do you know why it's those 3 dots, that warning or error that is giving you in require? Why is actually you do have the message?
Yeah, like I'm able to, like it'll, like for example, I could do that, but then my code won't run. It'll probably yell at me. Yeah, I'd have to set up. There would just be some additional configurations I'd have to do that I'm just not going to worry about for right now.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. But yeah, that would be an easy thing to do. But the purpose of this is just to show how we can use the debugger. So, all right, so I've got my breakpoint here on line 3. So let's go ahead and run our demo and see what happens. Check it out. Now we're here. So that we've got our little play pause situation up here. And then we've got this menu over here on the left. So we're going to kind of break this down a little bit. So this will let us continue to the next breakpoint. I've only got one breakpoint, so I'm not going to hit that because it'll just run the rest of the code. This will go to the next line, and this lets me step into functions as we get there. And as you can see, I'm able to kind of hover over things to see what they are, which is pretty cool. So if I step over, I'll now be able to see, hey, look at that. That's the string I kind of expect. Let's step into our next function call, which would be this hello world. So if I click here, boom, it's going to go to my hello world function. That's pretty awesome. And if I hover over this, hey, look at that. That's the string that I provided it. And we'll just go there and go to the next line. Of course, there's my output right there. Pretty awesome. So on the left here, let's kind of break this down a little bit. So starting from the top, this shows what our variables are at the point that we're at in the runtime. So you'll notice that there's world here, there's Earth, but Mars is undefined. Well, that's just because we haven't run it yet. By nature, a breakpoint or a debugger, wherever it stops, it doesn't run that line yet. So I'm on line 5, but it hasn't run line 5 yet. It's basically stopped right before it. So that's why Mars is not defined, because this line has not run. But world has run, Earth has run, this hello world function, which is this guy up here. Oh, we've got someone else joining, awesome. We've got this hello world function up here, which we can see. And then there's some other stuff here that we won't go into too much detail, but there's an exports thing here. There's a this object, there's the require. These are all existing kind of in our local scope. And then if you click on this global, then you can see there should be some things that you're familiar with, such as arrays. There's like buffers and booleans and all these things that our global, the global node object provides us as well. But we don't need to worry about that too much. But it's just kind of cool to note that that's there. This is my favorite thing, this watch area. This lets us not only look at specific values that our code has, but it also lets us like create our own expressions to see what values are. So for example, I want to know what the value Earth is. Hey, check it out. It's hello Earth. I can also do expressions. So I don't have to just do things that already exist. I could do an expression Earth to uppercase. Oh, whoops, did I? Let me change that. That's should be. There we go. Check it out. I can actually like code inside of here to see new values, which can be really helpful depending on the situation you're in. But this watch area is really great for debugging. You get to kind of observe specific things that you care about. And then the call stack here just shows you, well, it shows what functions are on the call stack. If you're not sure what the call stack is, I highly recommend looking up JavaScript or function call stacks in JavaScript. It's a good concept to know, but we won't go into that today because this is not a call stack webinar, but maybe I'll do one sometime. Actually, we're doing a function webinar next week, so I will talk about the call stack. Anywho, as you can see, this breakpoint section shows what breakpoints we have. So as you can see, I've got one on line 3 of index.js. I can turn it off if I want. Notice how it went gray. I can put it back in, and I can also delete it. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit continue. That was the only breakpoint I put in, so then the code will then complete. But that is how you use the debugger. It's pretty simple. In some cases, there are a lot more complicated things you can do with it, such as you can have it running with with Jest. You can have it running with NodeMon if you're familiar with coding in Express. NodeMon's a really cool library. But there's just different configurations. But I just wanted to give you guys a little heads up on kind of what some of these mean. But the default configuration for Node, in most cases, is all you need. Sometimes you may have to change the file name for your program, but nothing crazy. Does anybody have any questions before we go on to the next thing?
I have 2 questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
The buttons that were showing in in the call stack, when you were debugging, are those the same buttons that are on top? Just, I assume yes, but I just want to make sure.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, like if you debug again, if you put a
Mhm.
breakpoint again,
Yeah, let me put the breakpoint in again.
and if you hover the demo index,
Mhm.
and those buttons are the same buttons that are on the top right corner.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can, yeah, so like if I were like step over, that would take me to the same place. Yeah. So yes, to answer the question, yes, they're the same.
And my last question is, I cannot do it, but maybe, can you make the variables square that space? Can you make it bigger?
Can I make it bigger?
Yeah, like half of the screen. Can you drag down? I cannot do it on my machine. I want to know if I'm doing something wrong. Like you see where it says watch, the section watch.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make that very small. And I want to make the section of local and global bigger, so I can read more.
Oh, I believe that's something you can do in the, where is it? It's in the settings somewhere.
Okay.
So
Okay, but you cannot do it just dragging with the mouse, right?
I don't think so. Like I can't just like zoom in and out, unfortunately. But believe you can, let me find the settings, preferences. So if you go to, I believe it's in window, could be wrong. No, what is it? It's in one of these. There's like a sizing thing. Is it in appearance? Color customizations. Not that thing, location visible, indent. I feel like I've done this before. I don't remember where it is.
Maybe we can search where it says search settings.
Yeah, so I believe it's called font. Ah, here we go. Oh, well, problem is that this is for like, that's for like everything.
That's fine. I will look at it.
Yeah, but anyways, this is where you can go. I just don't remember offhand. I apologize.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. So, but anyways, I'm glad you bring this up because all of your settings and stuff you can access from File, Preferences, and then Settings. And then in Settings, there's all sorts of fun stuff, such as formatting. You can say Format on Save, which is what I like to do.
Just for reference, if you are in Mac, it's called Preferences Settings.
Yeah. 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 I'm in a Windows, so mine's a little different. But yeah, thank you. Sweet. All right. So the last thing I wanted to do, or there's a couple more things. So there's a couple extensions that are really awesome that I mentioned before, and they integrate really well with VS Code. And one of the things I think is really useful, get out of this debugger. So one of the things that's really useful is the linter. And I've really come to appreciate linting and formatting, especially after working on teams of like 10 or more people, when everyone's got their own kind of stylistic ideas. Having a linter and a formatter so that everything is consistent across developers, it's become really helpful, I've found. So this extension, Eslint, is something that I highly recommend. It's by Dirk Bamer, and it's got 4.5 stars, almost 11 million downloads. It's really useful and really, really, it's pretty much the standard. So to get this working, first of all, you just have to enable it or download it. I've already got it downloaded, but you would just see an install button here. And we're going to go ahead and create a lint we're going to open a lint configuration. So the way to do that is you can either, depending if you have Eslint installed globally or if you have it installed locally in your project. I prefer having it locally in your project just because for version purposes, keeps everything consistent across everybody for whoever's using the project. So we're going to go ahead and create a node project. I'm going to.
I have a question, Ben.
Yeah, go ahead.
And also, you don't want to have it globally, because if you have it globally and you are just debugging something that belongs to somebody else, you don't want to change all their style, right? If it's global.
Well, that won't be a problem because the linting rules will be in the project itself. The problem just happens when you have, if let's say you have a different version of Eslint stored globally than I do, there could be certain features that don't exist on both of ours, and that could cause problems.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a good point. So we're going to go ahead and create a new node project. So just do this little shortcut here, npm init. And we get our nice little package JSON here. All right. And we're going to install the linter. So I'm going to do Eslint, and I'm going to save it as a developer dependency, not as a project dependency. All right, almost there. Oh, I don't know why that happened. Okay, I don't know what that was about, but okay, it worked. Beautiful. Okay, as you can see, we've got Eslint now installed. I'm just going to use my, I'm going to show you a cool little thing that you can do with VS Code. First of all, it recognizes package JSON. So it will recognize certain pre-existing scripts in your JSON, which is pretty sweet. I'm going to make one up though. I'm going to call it Lint, and I'm just going to have it to the Eslint library. That way I don't have to like do this whole node modules thing and try to find it inside of the, like that works fine, but I'm just going to do this. I'm going to say npm run lint, and I'm going to then give it an argument. I'm just going to initiate a lint project. What this will do is ask me a series of questions. And again, this has nothing to do with VS Code. Go ahead.
You have to put dash dash space dash dash in it?
Yes. I could do it here if I wanted to, but that just means that we're escaping out of the first script and then taking whatever is next as arguments to that.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right, so it's going to ask us what we're using Eslint for. I'm just going to do it for checking syntax and finding problems. I'm going to use CommonJS for this example. If I were using TypeScript or something else, I'd use the JavaScript modules. But I'm just going to use CommonJS just for fun. None of these. I'm going to use this for Node. I'm going to say no for TypeScript. It runs in Node, and I'm going to do it as JSON. Just because I like JSON. Alrighty, so as you can see, there's now a new file that's been generated called eslintrc JSON. And there's a couple things here that are kind of cool. It's asking us what environments our linter is going to be parsing our code in. This guy says that we're just extending whatever the default Eslint recommended settings are. And then here's where we're going to put our linting rules. There's already a bunch listed in the Eslint recommended. If you want to see them, you can go to the Eslint website and look at their docs, and it just shows it. Shows their standard configuration. So as you'll notice, let's make a, as you'll notice, I
Didn't
just
you
started
choose,
typing.
didn't
Go
you,
ahead.
didn't you choose Node and I see browser in the Eslint one?
That might actually just be a mistake because this should also say node. That might be a bug in their little thing there.
Okay.
But anyways, yeah, node should show up. So one thing I want to point out is as I'm typing, you're going to see, because of my linter,
Oh, you put the browser.
we can now see problems, which is kind of cool. So over here, you'll see this error where this number means one, like line one. There's one problem in this file. And parsing error, unexpected token. That's because I haven't really finished my thought yet. So I'm going to do const hello world again equals hello world. Okay, so this is a perfectly valid expression, but our linter, and because VS Code has been integrated, or because our linter is integrated with VS Code, this extension is really awesome. It allows us to it will scan our code for certain red flags and issues. For example, if I hover over it, it's assigned a value but never used. That simply means that I have something defined, but it's never actually consumed anywhere. So for that to go away, I'd have to actually, do something with it. So I could do console log hello world, and now there's no issues. I'm now using it, everything's fine. And what's really cool is that if I decide to change some of my rules, my linting rules, then I'm able to, or my VS Code will register them and will respect them. So for example, I'm going to enforce semicolon rules. As of right now, if I were to forget a semicolon, there doesn't seem to be any fuss made. So I'm going to go ahead and enforce that. And I'm going to say in my Eslint thing here. And what's cool, again, about VS Code is that it recognizes the template for this JSON. So if I just start typing quotes, it gives me all of the possible rules, which is super awesome because no one wants to memorize all those. So I'm going to go ahead and type in the semi. So I'm going to say, okay, for semicolons, I want you to warn me. An error means it will be red, a warning means it'll be yellow. So I'm going to go ahead and save that and check it out. Immediately, my VS Code has told me that there's now a problem in my code. And it even shows me where with these little annoying squigglies. It's a yellow squiggly, and if I hover over it, it shows me a missing semicolon. And you can also tell VS Code to, when you save, like on save, you can have it lint for you, which is pretty cool. So again, I'm going to take those off, and I know what the error is, so I can click on it here, and I can enter it. Oops. Or I can save, and it'll fix it for me. And there's some rules that this will work for, and there's some that just won't. Looks like I have someone check. Okay. Yes, this is being recorded, and this will be put out into the world. So you will all be able to come back to this. All right, so that's just one simple example, but the pattern holds. Whatever rules I determine are important here, and what are already important based on whatever I'm extending, you're going to see those warnings and errors pop up. And there's a ton of different types of rules, and I won't go into it because this isn't really a thing on linting specifically. This is just how VS Code will help you with linting. So that's pretty awesome that it does that. So does anybody have any questions before we go on to the next thing? And I want to kind of open up for just general questions as well.
I have 2 questions if nobody else have a question.
All right, go ahead.
One is that I do have Eslint, but I never created this file called Eslint trc.json. I believe what I have been coding, basic stuff, it was telling me where there is an error and things like that.
So if you don't have an Eslint RC-JSON, VS Code actually kind of has a default one that it uses.
So I was never using the Eslint, the extension that I installed?
So you said you don't have Eslint installed?
No, I do have since the beginning, I always had that Eslint extension installed.
Yeah, the extension, right.
But I never ever created, I didn't even know how to create this Eslint trc.json. So my question is, I was using Eslint before, or I wasn't using this extension?
It was, the extension was probably using a default configuration file. I think, I could be wrong, but my understanding is that if you don't have an Eslint JSON file locally in your project, it will just default to whatever there's like a default one that it will use.
Okay.
Yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. And my second question is, I was trying to follow and I did npm install save dev Eslint, and I get a message that say the Eslint extension will use no modules Eslint for validation, which is installed locally in VS Code -demo. If you trust this version of Eslint process allow, otherwise press do not allow. What is that?
Allow is fine. What that means is that it's going to, instead of trying to use, basically what it means is it's going to dig into your node modules folder and find the Eslint here, which is what you want. Because this is what allows, so for example, let's say you and I and the other people in this room were sharing this project. Then we would all be using the exact same Eslint version that's listed here in the dev dependencies.
Oh, I see. I understand now. Gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, that's good. It's a good thing that that's happening.
So I still need after that to do the npm run lint --space --init.
Right.
Because then in that moment, I put the rules that I want to follow.
Right. Exactly.
All right. Thank you.
Cool. So that's for linting. There is a TypeScript package or extension that also is very cool and works. I probably don't have time to go into that one. But the other one that I did want to mention is the Jest. This guy. This is really cool because this will allow you to write Jest tests pretty easily. So what I'm going to do is we're going to install Jest. Take a minute. The internet's been kind of slow today. Sweet, there we go. All right, Jest is there. And let's just create a Jest configuration really quick. So I'm going to kind of do the same thing that I did with the lint. Just going to do Jest. And we're going to go ahead and do npm run Jest, and then we'll do an init. Most libraries that have built-in CLIs, they're all going to have that similar kind of pattern. So yes, I do want to use that. I want to use Node. I don't care about coverage ports, V8. Sure, I don't care about that one. We're not going to worry about mocking stuff. This is going to be super contrived. Okay, there we go. So there we go. Here's our Jest configuration that's been created. Beautiful. Okay, so again, I'm just going to show you kind of how the Jest extension for VS Code is used. It's pretty awesome. So we'll go to create a, first of all, let's make a function that we're going to test. So I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to make a function that just adds numbers. Super contrived, like I said. It's going to return x plus y, nothing fancy. There we go. And we're going to have a test. So we're just going to call this demo, or we'll call this add.test.js. So it's Jest actually looks for files that end in .test or .spec, just FYI. Okay, so we're going to write a test that looks for this function, or that tests this adding function. So we're going to say, we're going to grab it from our fake little library we made. So this comes from our index, and we're going to get that guy. Okay, so we're going to describe our adding function. And we are going to, it should add numbers correctly. All right, so first thing to notice is that our linter is doing a great job. It's calling us out on our crap. We haven't used this add function yet. It doesn't know what this describe and it is. It's saying, hey, these are variables that are not defined. Well, we know, because we're using Jest, that describe and it are actually built-in functions that Jest provides. So we just want to tell our linter that so that it doesn't yell at us. So we're going to go ahead and add Jest to our environment. And immediately, it now respects the fact that these are actually real functions. It's still yelling at us at this because we haven't used add yet. But we're going to go ahead and just say, I expect when I add 2 and 2 to be 4. Oh, that's supposed to say expect. There we go. Okay, and we could try some other values. We do like 2 and 5 to be 7. And I don't know, one more we'll do 5 and 5 to be 10. Super contrived little test here, but it does the job for us. All right. Oh, and that's not, okay, there we go. Beautiful. So let's go ahead and run our test. So if we go to our package JSON, notice up here, there's this little VS Code provides this. There's like this little debug thing. We're going to go ahead and run our Jest in the debugger, which is super awesome. So we're going to go to hit run. We're going to, from our, oh, I deleted that before. So we're going to create a launch file, but we're going to use the Jest configuration. There is one built in. If this will open. Why is this not opening? I'll try it from here. There we go. All right. So there is a Jest thing right here. Super awesome. So again, VS Code Jest test right here. I'm not going to go over anything in here. It's not that important. This just says, hey, run the Jest that's in our node modules folder. That's all we need to know for now. So let's go ahead and we're going to select that. We're now going to run it. It's going to do all this. Our debugger is attached. It automatically knows of our test, and check it out. It ran the test, it passed it. And let's go here. And we're good, it passed. If I had done, say, 11, I obviously know that 5 and 5 does not equal 11, but let's say I run that test again. Oh, boom, failed, and it tells us exactly where. It expected 11, but received 10, meaning that we expected the wrong number. And we can just fix it like that, and everything's great. What's cool is that we can put in breakpoints. So I'm going to go ahead and in my add function, just so I can actually have some space in here to put a breakpoint, I'm going to put that guy like that. And let's just run it one more time. There we go. Check it out. So 2 and 2. Okay, the next time it runs, it's going to be with the 2 and 5, right? 2 and 5. Next time, runs it with 5 and 5. That guy. And boom, they all pass. So this is another thing I love about VS Code is this, it's mostly the extensions, obviously. Like, they're all pretty great. Anywho, does anybody have any questions? That's all I have prepared. But if anybody has any questions, shoot, go ahead.
When you run the npm install save dev Jest, what was the file that was created?
It creates this Jest config.
.js.
Yeah, and don't worry too much about this. The Jest docs, kind of talk about these in more detail.
Got it. I stepped away for like a minute, and I didn't know where did you get the launch.json file?
Oh, so all I did was go to this thing right here, and so it already exists now, so it's not going to show. If you don't have, if this VS Code folder doesn't exist, so for example, so I'll just delete the VS Code folder. Okay. So if I go here, you're going to see this, and we're going to create a launch.json file, and we care about a node environment. I have the Chrome extension for this, so that shows up, but we care about nodes. We're going to select node. So it goes ahead and it will automatically create a launch.json with this, but this is just for a plain node project. I'm running Jest. Now I could just as easily just run npm run test and it will run my Jest thing for me. But doing it from here allows me to put breakpoints in my tests, which is fantastic. So you just click on this add configuration and you just have to find Jest in here. And if you were using create ragtop, you could use that one, but we're just using the node one. So we're going to click that. And what it does is it adds another configuration here. And whatever this name is, this is the default, but I could call it, I could run Jest. And then when I go back to my debugger, I'm going to go over here and select run Jest from the list. And it's now going to run my Jest command on this folder. And it automatically looks for files called something.test.
Got it. Thanks.
Yep. And there it goes. And it's, yeah, I mean, this is super helpful. Being able to put breakpoints in on a test is fantastic. Because then you can kind of separate your concerns. As far as, you know, it can be kind of a pain to, like on a server that you're building or whatever, it can be kind of a pain to like recreate the specific scenario that you're trying to test. But if you're doing it programmatically in Jest, you can just run it there, put breakpoints in, see exactly where things are happening wrong, and fix it immediately.
Yes. No, this is great.
Yeah.
I didn't know many things from this hour. That's
Cool.
That's cool.
Good. I'm glad. Does anybody else have any questions or comments or whatever? Nobody? Okay. Well, yeah, so we're still in the works as far as getting these videos out there in the public. Hoping within the next couple of weeks we should have them out. So I will make an announcement when we have that ready. In the meantime, we'll still be doing these every week. So next week, I believe, is we're going to talk about functions. So my real joy is JavaScript itself. I just love going through problems and solving them, and various aspects of the language. So we're going to talk about functions. So we're going to get into like the language itself. So I'm going to talk about ES6. I'm going to talk about hoisting. I'm going to talk about all things functions, classes, cool things you can do with functions, and certain implementations that are really useful, such as generators. And we may even talk about observables, which is my new favorite thing ever. If anyone hasn't heard of an observable, check out the library RxJS. It is awesome. Anyways, thank you guys for coming, and hopefully I'll see you next week.
Thank you, man.
Mm-hmm.